Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Peter, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Peter, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, I love you. Okay, we have stumbled on this passage. I'm sure every one of us has stumbled on this passage and came out very confused. Why is Jesus asking Peter the same question three times? Such an important question, by the way. What's going on here? Is Jesus being stubborn? What's the point of asking three times the same thing? Well, there are different interpretations of this passage, but one of the most common one is that here Jesus is trying to reinstate Peter. Remember, Peter had just denied Jesus three times. And for example, St. Augustine was holding this interpretation. He was saying, this is exactly the moment where Jesus is reinstating Peter as the leader of the apostles. And so, since Peter had denied Jesus three times, Jesus asked Peter to reiterate three times and make clear that yes, he loves Jesus and is ready to take the lead of the apostle once again. This is, of course, it's a very solid interpretation, but it's only part of the interpretation. Because what happens if we go and read the Greek original text instead of the English translation? Something astonishing happens. We will realize that Jesus is not asking the same question three times. The three questions that Jesus is asking are completely different questions. All right, let's look at this. He says, Otheon eristesan lege to Simoni Petro o Jesus. So Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon Ioanna, Simon, son of John, agapasme pleon tuton. So the verb is agapas. Do you love me? Pleon, more tuton than these other disciples. Lege auto. He responds, Peter responds, Nai, yes, Kyrie, yes, Lord. Su oidas hoti philose. You know that I philose. You see, there's a difference between the verb used by Jesus and the verb used by Peter in responding. So Jesus is asking, agapasme, do you love me? And Peter is not responding, agapose. He says, philose. Okay, what's going on here? There are two verbs here. One is agapao, okay, agapao, which means to love, okay, and the other verb is phileo, all right, phileo, which means to love. But in English, there's no distinction, okay, and that's why if you read the English translation, you cannot perceive this distinction that is clear in Greek. Now, we need to understand what kind of love the verb agapao is talking about and what kind of love the verb phileo is talking about. So in Greek, the verb agapao talks about that love that comes out of a decision of a person. When you marry a person, you decide to love that person until that until the very last moment of your life. At least that's the marriage vows. So it's a type of love that is based on a strong will, a strong decision. You decide, you make the decision of loving somebody else, even though that love is going to bring you to suffer. It's going to bring you to sacrifice your own life for the other person. That's the type of love. Agape in Greek is the highest level of love. It's that love that pushes you to even sacrifice your life for the other person. When Jesus says there's no greater love than laying down your life for your friends, this is what Jesus is talking about. Agapao, that type of love. So that's what Jesus is asking Peter. Do you love me more than these others? So there are two things that Jesus is saying in the first question. Not only he's asking Peter if he loves him to the point of sacrifice his life for him, but even more than all these other disciples will be willing to sacrifice their life for me. It's a super high bar that Jesus is putting here. Okay. Now, what is Phileo? Well, Phileo, it's love again, but it's a type of um, natural, instinctive love. It's a sort of affection, natural affection that you can feel about somebody else. So the agapao is a love that is in the mind. It's something that you decide and you choose to do. The love from the phileo point of view is more about a feeling that is inside yourself. It's an instinctive feeling of love. When we are in love with a person, we don't decide to be in love with another person. It's just a feeling that we have, right? And that hopefully that feeling that turns into, the higher level type of love where you make a decision to stay with that person until the end of your life, even sacrificing your life for the other person. But you see that completely different logic between these two types of loves. Okay, so this love of phileo is more similar to like than a love, right? When you like something, you cannot even understand why you're like, it's something natural, right? You may love art, you may love music, you may love, it's something instinctive out of your own nature, all right? This is the type of difference. So loosely speaking, we could translate agapao with love and phileo with like, all right? If we did that, we would understand much better this back and forth between Jesus and Peter. So you see that in the very first question, Jesus is setting a very high bar. Do you love me in the sense of agapao? Are you ready to sacrifice your life for me? More than these other guys are ready to sacrifice their life for me. And guess what Peter responds? Peter responds, well, you know that I like you, that I have some natural affection toward you. So you see that this answer from Peter is not satisfactory to Jesus. Is highly insufficient. It doesn't reach the high bar that Jesus put there. That's the reason why Jesus asked the question once again. And what does he ask? Well, lege auto. He said to him, well, that's the response. He led to say, he responded to him, we know, feed my sheep. Okay. And then he moves on. All right. Lege auto, he tells him, palin, again, deuteron, a second time. Simon, Ioanna, Simon of John, agapasme. You see? So the question is the same, agapasme. So he keeps the bar very high, agapao. But this time, he doesn't compare that agapao with the other disciples. So he's lowering the bar in the second question. He's saying, all right, maybe I asked you something too much, okay, too high here. I put the bar too high. I asked you not only if you love me, but if you love me more than these guys here, because the implication here is that Peter, these other guys here around you, they love me. They're ready to sacrifice their life for me. Do you love me more than they? Okay, so he saw the highly insufficient response from Peter. And so Jesus lowers the bar and says, okay, forget about these other guys. Let's not make any comparison here. Let me just ask you a simpler question. Do you love me? Not more than the other, just do you love me? So you see the difference in the second question. But still, the bar is very high. It's like, okay, forget about these guys. You, yourself, are you ready to sacrifice your life for me? And see how Peter responds. Legeuto, Peter responds to him, Niker, yes, Lord. Su oidas hoti philose. It's exactly the same answer. Yes, Lord, you know that I like you. Again, no, that's not the answer that Jesus was waiting for and was expecting. This is the reason why Jesus goes on to the third question. And look what happens in the third question. Verse 17. Legeuto, Jesus says, To triton, the third time, he said, Simon Ioannos, Simon of John, phileis me. You see that Jesus changed the verb. Now he went down to Peter's level. Like saying, okay, you keep saying that you like me, but do you really like me? This is a striking question because here Jesus is doubting even that Peter simply likes him, as if to say, all right, probably I asked you too much. Okay. I asked you if you were ready to sacrifice your life for me. And you just responding that you like me. Okay, let me ask you, do you really like me? Whoa, that's a hard question. Okay. He's rubbing his finger. Okay. He's rubbing it in. And look at the reaction from Peter. Peter is absolutely distressed by this question. Why? Usually in the standard interpretation is, well, Peter is distressed because Jesus keeps asking the same question. No, there's much more to that. Peter is not distressed because Jesus is asking the same question over and over again. It's like he's losing his patience. No, no, no. He's distressed because the third time he didn't ask, do you love me? He was distressed because Jesus asked him, do you like me? So he lowered the bar to the lowest bar possible, to the lowest level possible. And Jesus is kind of implying that maybe Peter is not even liking him a lot. And so what does Peter respond? The same thing over and over again. He told him, Lord, Pantasu oidos, you know everything. Suginoskes, you know hoti philose. You know that I like you. Peter cannot move on from this Phileo. He's not ready to say agapao to Jesus, but he is indeed confirming that he likes Jesus. So you see how this whole passage makes much more sense in Greek. Jesus is starting from a very high bar and slowly lowering it to see where Peter is going to end up, at what level. And the level that he's going to end up, unfortunately, is the lowest level possible, which is, I like you. I always think about this back and forth as if it were back and forth between a boyfriend and a girlfriend. Okay. It's just an analogy, of course, but I think it illustrates well what's going on here. Think about a boyfriend and girlfriend, and the girlfriend found out that the boyfriend cheated with her. Okay, this more or less corresponds to Peter denying Jesus. Okay, not exactly the same, but it makes the point. You get the point. And then the guy comes back, repents. Of course, he's super sorry. He's obviously sad and sorry, and he says that he's sorry. And so, of course, now the girlfriend wants to really understand if he loves him or not, right? And so let's say that the girlfriend's okay, takes him back, is like, hey, uh you know Simon, do you love me? And think about if the boyfriend is like, well, yes, you know that I like you. Would you would you accept that answer? No, that's not the answer that girlfriend was expecting for. It's like, what do you mean you like me? I asked you if you love me. And the boyfriend still saying, you know that I like you. No, that's not what you want to hear, right? Yeah, that's what's going on here. That's exactly what's going on here. And if you go on reading the end of the chapter of John 21, you're going to see that soon after this, Jesus calls Peter, and he basically prophesies that Peter is gonna be a martyr. He's gonna lay down his life for him, and he's gonna tell him, come follow me. Now you're young, and you can go wherever you want, but when you're old, you will not. You're gonna stretch out your arm, and people are gonna take you where you don't want to go. And John asked that Jesus was saying this because he was talking about the way that Peter would be killed, right, on the cross, and the way he would glorify the Lord, right? So obviously there is a connection between this question, do you love me, and the readiness of Peter to lay down his life for Jesus. And in fact, there's a very funny um, image here going on, very funny scene going on, because Peter at that point understands that Jesus is calling him to be ready to sacrifice his life for him. And so he turns around and he's like, hey, what are you calling just me? What about all the other guys here, right? What about John here? And Jesus is like, it's not your business. You come follow me. And it's so interesting because from that point on, Peter is gonna follow him, is gonna become the leader of the apostle once again, and he's gonna be ready, and eventually he is gonna sacrifice his life for the Lord.